Welcome to the Protecting Your Nest podcast. One of the reasons I love having a podcast is that I get a chance to meet many of the low carb experts I've learned from and mutually respect. And for the first time, I had a chance to meet many of them at the Low Carb USA conference in San Diego. It's kind of cool to shake their hand and have a conversation. What I wasn't expecting is that there are others who I would meet who would also inspire me as well. And one of those people are here with me today to share her amazing story of healing using a low carb diet to achieve it. And that is my guest, Dr. JoAnn McManamy. And she is a wonderful, wonderful person who I met during a conference. And she's also fairly educated in the world of communication. She has a bachelor's of communication from the University of Connecticut, an MBA with a focus on management. She also has a MS in counseling and psychology and a doctorate in education from the University of Connecticut as well. And, I had a chance to meet her at Low Carb USA in San Diego. When I met her, I was like, you know what? I love your story. I think it may inspire someone. So let's go ahead and share your story with my audience on the Protecting Your Nest podcast. So JoAnn, welcome to the podcast. And I'm so happy you're here with me today.
Oh, I'm so happy to be here with you.
Yeah, I couldn't wait to have this conversation. I'm excited. I really, we had at least, I think we sat down for dinner with, my wife was with me during the conference, and you had a chance to meet her, and it was just a wonderful experience. So let's start maybe with how you found me. Like, how did you even discover me at all and learn of the work I was doing?
Well, I heard you on Tro and Brian's Low Carb MD, I believe it was last summer, and I was really taken with your story of how you really are a community activist with your patients and making sure they had real food in the grocery stores, because I think you called it a food desert. And I
Yes.
was really impressed. I said, he's going beyond the typical doctor, yet you went well beyond that. And I said, he's fascinating. So then I also heard you on Brett Shear's podcast. I know your name came up, and I said, I'm going to listen to that. So I met you last summer on the University of Podcast.
That's right.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a good place to meet. And what was kind of funny to me is before you met me in person, you met someone else.
Met. And you know why I met her? I stopped her in the hall to say to her what a wonderful husband she has, because you acknowledged her.
Yeah.
At least 3 times. So I approached her and I said, I just want to give him a hug. Now, your wife has a great sense of humor. She says, let me go get him so you can do it. And she did.
She did. It was so funny. And I do remember when I did my discussion at the Low Carb USA conference, and I talked about mitochondria, and I brought her up at least once because, I told her I had to use slides of electron transport chains and citric acid sites. She was like, are you sure you want to show that? I said, no, they can handle it, because one thing I know for sure about low carb and keto is evidence-based, right? So the things that we talk about in biochemistry are the reasons why we know this works, right? So I thought it was funny that she was like, hey, are you sure? But I was like, we'll try to keep it at a level where everybody gets it. But yeah, I appreciate the fact that she met you, you met her, and then we were able to be introduced. And we had a really good time. They made our dinners very entertaining, made them a lot of fun. And I really enjoyed it. But another thing that's really fun that I enjoy is what I learned about you. And yes, I learned that you were previously on The Price is Right.
Yes.
And
I
was
so list items.
That's right. So let's tell the audience, and what we'll probably do is have some of the Price is Right recordings or news stories in the show notes. But talk a little bit about how you ended up on the Price is Right.
Well, this was my fourth attempt because every time I go to California, I see if they're taping. And the first time I didn't know anything. So that's, the second time the producers started paying attention to me. And I was with my younger brother, Jay, and he said, "You're a contender." And of course, they didn't pick me. The third time, I was with some wonderful people, and they said, "They're going to pick you." Didn't pick me. On the way out of the third taping, I stepped up to microphone number 2 and did it Arnold Schwarzenegger. "I'll be back." And they called me back to microphone 2. So I set the vision for the next time. And what I learned most was I had a strategy to get picked. When God hears your plans, he goes to Bermuda, And I wasn't meant to be in the first in line.
Mm-hmm.
I had to go back to my hotel because I was wearing this watch. Threw it in, came back. I was supposed to be number 151, which I was. So I got in there and just, filled everything out, was hanging out with two beautiful college girls, Kayla and Rebecca. And we just kept laughing through the whole thing. I told them I'd beat up their professors, things like that. And when it came to the producers section of it, I said, I've listened to The Price is Right for over 60 years with my grandma when I was age 9. So he threw a question at me, "Who is the host?" And I told him it was correct, of course. Asked me a couple of questions, and I did something I never did before. "I want you to pick me." Well, everybody wants that. And I want a trip to Argentina in a car. And so please pick me. I asked him. And off he went, but he spent a lot of time with me. Off he went, blah, 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 blah. Then we go into the last part where the cameras are all on you the whole time. And they're looking for enthusiasm. They play really great old Price is Right shows. And we're cheering and everything. Got up to the studio. It takes about 2 hours to get through all the selection process. And I get seated on the aisle. And I didn't pick up that the usher was really hinting to me. She came up to me, she said, would you get those sunglasses off your head? And came back a minute later. Would you please push your purse way in the seat? George comes out, boom, 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 calls a name. I don't believe he called me. Can't hear him. There is a tag, an oak tag with magic marker, my name. And I just went, "Ah." And that old girl ran all the way down to microphone number 2. And I said, "You got this. You've got this. You've got this. You just needed to be picked."
That's right.
You know the game. And I kicked ass immediately.
You kicked butt.
Yep,
I
first
love
one up
it.
on the stage, and won my onstage game, and I just couldn't believe it. Drew Carey was so kind and nice.
That's good.
Everybody
That's
at
good.
The Price is Right is kind and loving, and it just was a wonderful day.
That's awesome.
So
Well, thank you. I was amazed. I literally I don't know if we talked about that during our dinners, but I just when I found out that that was part of your story, it just blew my mind. So it's just something I just thought was interesting, unique, and I'm just happy that you had that experience, and
it
it's
was,
really cool.
but it's
It's
a
really cool.
wonderful experience to get out of my own way, because
Mm-hmm.
when you overthink something,
Mm.
I just relaxed and went right into the moment and just had so much fun with it. And
Well, I think about your Instagram handle, and it has Dr. like Dr. Mac or McManamy, and it's McManamy. And what I saw is that it said, growing old has so many joys, and it said achieving bucket list items and regaining my health. So I assume that The Price is Right was on your bucket list. And
Absolutely, it
so,
was
so
on my
but I also assume you have other things that you've done since you now
you
understand
know
that
what?
that's important. So talk a little bit about that.
Well, let's talk about me being on this podcast today.
Bam.
Bucket list, and I can't. I just am so grateful. But other things, one of the careers I didn't choose, or I was really born a little too soon for, because they didn't have a lot of women in the media. I made that an excuse there, but I've always wanted to be a reporter, and I found out the local CBS affiliate in Orlando was sending a reporter over to cover the wedding of Meghan and Harry. I happened to be going that weekend to London, and I was talking to myself: should I contact her? Should I not? I found out who it was, and I said, what the hell? Just offer your help." Emailed her. I said, I'll never hear from her. Say, you can't do that. And 20 minutes later, I get a fantastic. We're definitely going to get together. And I didn't, off I am to London to cover a major news story, international news story. And she didn't tell me what she was going to do. She said, "I want you to be surprised." And then the camera was in my face. And it was, "You're taking us on a tour of London." And not only did I have so much fun doing it, I took them into Fortnum and Mason, the Queen's grocery store. Other places didn't want the cameras in, and we just had fun and walked all over London and had a great day. And I ended up with a very good friend in that TV reporter who's now an anchor in South Carolina. And what a day that was. And that same reporter, 2 years later, made sure I got on the morning news because it was newsworthy that local women wins big on The Price is Right. And I
Yeah,
got to talk about that. So 2 bucket items there. And what was the other one I wrote in? Did I? I think that's that. Yeah,
that's
those are the last ones. So now I
yeah,
have 2 on my
that's
bucket
cool.
list, and I've got to think of the third because I have a spot now. I still want, everybody says this isn't going to happen, and maybe it isn't, but it's out there. I want to sing backup for Mick Jagger and the Rolling Stones. Specifically, Give Me Shelter.
That's awesome. I
Yeah,
love
I want to
that.
do that. So that's out there in the
So
ethers.
we put it
It's
in the
just out there.
universe, and I hope Mick is listening. Anybody
You,
knows him, send this episode to him and make sure he knows.
you never know. And the other one is I want to be invited to the White House for reasons that the president just, you know,
Yeah.
I just
Well,
want to do
I
that too.
I think that's awesome. I just think a lot of people are like, not sure about bucket lists, but I'll be honest with you, whether it's a New Year's resolution or whatever, for me personally, I like having these goals that I can
Mm-hmm.
work towards and kind of manifest. And so I
And
just think it's
manifesting.
important.
Huh?
Yeah, just and because you just got to make this life happen. You can't let life happen to you. You got to do
You
something to make
can't
it
be discouraged by naysayers
right.
about the Rolling Stones. Oh, that's never going to happen. I just don't know how it's going to happen.
Right.
You get out of your own way.
That's right. And there are people like what people don't understand is that, and even if you think about low carb USA, right? We're in my mind, these are like legends of low carb, right? But they're just people, right? So they're just people just like us, and they have the same needs we have. Everybody wants to be loved and all of these kind of things. So I just believe that anything is possible, and I'm happy that you're setting your goals high. I really appreciate that. I know that the people who listen to my podcast are always interested in, lifestyle and what it does to improve our lives. And I know that you have a journey that you should share with us. And even on your thumbnail for this episode, I went with a before and after. So let's talk a little bit about how you were able to make your transformation. What type of transformation did you make physically? And just talk a little bit about that so people understand from whence you've come.
Well, 25 years ago, I started to get ill. Um, I was leading a group of students, of my students and students of the college, on a trip to China, and it was heartbreaking for me. I was 280 pounds. My ankles looked like onions. I was extremely obese, and the Chinese would point out to me that I was, with their hand gestures, that I was fat. I could never figure that out before, but I got I was fat. And I would go back to the hotel at night and cry and cry. And it really got to me. And while there, I went to a traditional Chinese doctor. It was part of our tour. And he tested my pulses and he said, that my gallbladder was a problem, a big problem. I'm just thankful I got home because I got my gallbladder out very shortly after I arrived back in Boston, where I lived at the time. And at that point, I started losing the weight. And I got myself down to about 240 rather quickly because I couldn't eat. Um, the surgery was delayed for 3 weeks, but it was done by an excellent surgeon, and I felt better. Had I been eating correctly, that probably wouldn't have been necessary, but the past is the past. I started to feel better and then got hit in the head again 10 years after that with osteoarthritis. At that point, I started researching and learned about inflammation. And then the heart event, triple bypass, aortic valve replacement. And then was the critical question, do I want to live? Asking myself, do I want to live? And I said, yes. And then when I was diagnosed with diabetes and was told I had diabetic retinopathy, then I got impossible. Then I was like a train on a track. You couldn't deviate me. I weighed about 206 in 2017. And I went to a naturopath who said he could get me off all my diabetes meds. And he did. And from then on, it's just been a really very few deviations. But I seem to reach homeostasis now. So I decided I'd stay at this weight for a year and then, go for another 15. So,
Cool. So you're in a
yeah,
pretty good spot now. Where are you at currently with your weight
about
now?
155.
Okay, cool. So that's a good, so nice 50 plus pounds
Yeah.
off, gone, a young person maybe. And it's nice to not have to carry that extra
Oh my
weight.
God.
And
Feels so
and
good.
it's almost like when you learned of these diagnoses, you were like, this is not who I see
Uh-uh.
myself as. This
I,
is not my destiny. And you were
I
able
would
to,
encourage your younger um, patients just to don't wait for a catastrophe. I mean, with me, I'm stubborn anyway, but it was like the frying pan over the head. The subtleties were missed by me, and at that point, I became conscious.
okay.
Yeah.
Now, um, I know just for the audience, I think of the things you've mentioned. Most people know what arthritis is and heart disease, but this whole diabetic retinopathy is a little different. So I just want to just say, when you think about diabetics, and you can have hypertensive retinopathy, you can have diabetic retinopathy, and all that is saying is that that underlying chronic condition is what maybe led to it. And when you have a high sugar, as an example, floating around your body, it's like it's like it's like sludge, that it's like blood that's filled with sludge, and everywhere it goes, it's leaving its damage. They call it glycation, and so if it gets into the blood vessels, that sludge will leave its residue, right? And the residue will cause inflammation and irritation. So the goal is to not have a lot of sugar floating around in your blood.
Yeah.
And when we think about it, again, it's something that can ultimately lead to blindness when those retinal arteries in the back of your eyes get damaged, and we don't want that. The good news is, if you do a really good job with your diet and get all of that extra sugar from floating around in your body, and obviously control your blood pressure, you can pretty much not only prevent it from progressing, but I've had, you have patients saying, "Oh my God, my eye doctor said things look better." So it actually can get better, which is amazing. And it wasn't some type of procedure or medication that did that. It was the relief you gave your eyes, your retinal arteries, to give them a break. So I really think that's what you did. And as we get older, we're already dealing with the age factor, but then you add that extra sugar, and it's a recipe for disaster. So I'm just really happy that you were able to discover the dietary approach, the lifestyle approach. And how much of what you did was like, I know you were at the low carb conference, obviously, but did that homeopathic doc move you in the direction of low carb, or did you discover that yourself?
I actually, my Aunt Monica told me about low carb back when I was 18 years old in 1965.
Wow.
Yeah, it's been around. Um, and I knew about it. In my first 2 years, I went to a women's college before I transferred to UConn, and I majored in nutrition. And I
Huh.
learned about protein sparing actions, and I never acted upon it. See, you talk, yeah. And then I'd heard about it. The first iteration of Dr. Atkins. There was somebody before him, and 1969, a lot of my male friends were going on an all meat diet. And I didn't see it, but I really, really got it in 2017 when I went to the naturopath, and
Hmm.
he put me on a high fat, low carb diet. I felt wonderful. The fog had cleared, especially my thinking. And I dropped that summer, I dropped down to 175. I had not been below 200 since 1988.
Wow.
And people started noticing I lost weight. And one of my neighbors asked, "Who's that?" And that's JoAnn. You just
That's
haven't seen her in
Joanne.
a couple of months,
That's right.
And I just feel so much better.
Yeah.
And then when you kick it in with intermittent fasting,
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that. I
yeah,
remember many of the people at the conference were,
yeah,
participating in intermittent fasting. I certainly do. Breakfast is just not a thing. It may be black coffee, but that's about it. So, what was that? How did you learn about intermittent fasting?
well, again, the University of Podcast,
Yes,
Jason Fung,
that's
Peter
right.
Attia, Naomi Whittle,
Hmm.
and she was on something I saw, and I was mesmerized. See, I eat breakfast, but I don't eat dinner.
Mm.
It makes me sleep better. My
Mm.
it's not competing with digestion. So I tend to do a late breakfast and a mid-afternoon lunch.
Okay. And what's really important about your comments is that you did what you felt was best for you. I
Mhm.
tell patients, you can eat 3 times a day, you can eat twice a day, you can do intermittent fasting. You don't have to do intermittent fasting, but I just had a patient today in clinic, And she says, Doc, is something wrong with me? I'm just not hungry. I said, there's nothing wrong with you at all. That's what a low carb diet will do for you, because again, you're training your body to use fat as fuel. And we all have fat on our body, thankfully, for fuel purposes. The problem is that sometimes we don't use it for fuel and it just kind of builds up. And it's a great source of fuel, because you also said that you have mental clarity. And again, the fuel from ketones is like insane. It's
I
just,
test.
yeah, it's just insane. And you're just like, not only am I not, tired, not only I have more energy, I have that mental clarity, but it's all kind of coming at you uh, once you become fat or keto adaptive, meaning your body has adapted to knowing how to use fat as fuel. And it doesn't take long. It depends on the individual, but it may be days to maybe a week or two, and then your body's like, I got this. And it's really a great way to get through your day. So if I'm busy, I can, like I did eat before we recorded, but a lot of times I don't. And sometimes I feel even better when I don't. But and the funny thing about lunch today, Doc, is that I had leftover Labor Day food, but it was just a couple of pieces of ribs and a piece of ground beef, basically. So, but no, that's all I ate. So you can call me a carnivore because that's all I ate. But guess what? I didn't feel nothing afterwards. You don't feel tired afterwards. You just feel fine. And giving us permission to eat that type of meal and not being forced to eat a vegetable if we don't want to, not being forced to have a starch, those things that we were taught. You don't have to have those things. The key is to avoid the poisons, which is the sugar, excessive use of starchy food, processed food, and things like that. So thank you for giving us a feel for your
Yeah,
journey. I
yeah.
appreciate it.
I haven't been intermittent fasting for 2 weeks because I've been on the road, San
Yeah.
Diego, and then came home for a couple of nights and then up to Connecticut for a family reunion. But I start back, I've already started back on that today. I had a wonderful
Yeah.
lunch of salmon and spinach and broccoli at a restaurant. And they prepared it exactly the way I asked.
Oh, they will.
Exactly.
Dr. Ben Bokikio, again, when he was and he was there.
Yes.
It was nice to meet him. And for those who don't know who that is, check out a previous episode of the podcast. And he's teaching us how to exercise 15 minutes twice a week. So we love that. And but he said that when his wife is out, they simply order a pasta dish and hold the pasta. So isn't that cute? So so and
Reminds
I'm
me of Jack Nicholson.
yeah.
Have a chicken sandwich, hold the chicken.
Yeah, that is funny. So there's always little tricks that we can come up with
Yeah.
to help us when we're in the street and traveling. So now let's talk a little bit about resources. It sounds like you use podcasts as a way to learn and to think outside the box. A lot of people listening have similar weight loss goals. Um, so was it primarily like YouTube type videos and podcasts, or were there other resources that you used to help you?
Lately, it's primarily podcasts, but early on, when I got the arthritis, 2007, when I got the arthritis, I started really researching then, and that's when I really looked into inflammation. I mean, I must have 7 books of inflammation behind me,
Hmm.
and that's when I really started uh, doing a deep dive. And I practiced it. I practiced some fasting then, but not in the same way I do now. And I basically went vegan for a while. I
Mm.
always have been given vegan a chance, and it makes me tired,
Hmm.
and I don't feel full, and it just doesn't work for me. I do eat vegetables and lots of green vegetables. So,
Hmm.
uh, but advice I would give people beginning would be start anywhere you can, and that's important.
Mm-hmm.
Go to the resources of your public libraries. These are amazing. The librarians help you and get resources for you, direct you in the right way, just in case you don't know how to do research. And just get your hands on something. Podcasts are wonderful. What I worry about is people choosing really good podcasts versus the fluff or
Yeah.
the misinformed. So
Yeah.
there's always a risk in that. But the podcast groups on Facebook, on Instagram, I belong to several groups. Um, I just keep learning. My next step is I asked my cousin, who's a PA in the San Francisco area, how can I learn biochemistry? Biochemistry made simple is too difficult for me. And so I'm going to be starting up with Khan Academy later this week. So, yep,
I like
keep trying
I
to
like
learn that
that.
biochemistry.
And
Not
what's
giving
wonderful,
up.
what's cool is that this learning process, I think I'm a learner. I think you're a learner.
Yeah,
Um, and the more you learn, there's layers to this. So
yeah,
the stuff I learned at Low Carb USA, I added to what I previously learned. Then I add what I learn as I'm getting additional education, and it's just amazing how true that is. And let me illustrate it because you brought up biochemistry, and I think about what I did at my Low Carb USA presentation,
yes.
right? And I tried to highlight, although a carb restriction is, the high fat part of this is not that important. It's the low
Low
carb
carb.
that's important. And if you get your carbs under 20 carbs a day, and I would say total, not net, you're almost, unless you're an outlier, you're probably going to be successful. I just think that's just the rule of thumb. Now, the question is, when you were a vegan, why would you feel tired?
Many
Well,
carbs.
right. And I was a vegetarian, so I know what it felt like. I was grazing and trying to eat all the times to not feel hungry. But part of it is what I discussed at Low Carb USA. And, I kind of talked a little bit about how when you start with glucose, which is what you're going to end up using as fuel, primarily if you're a vegan or vegetarian, because, you're not, unless you add a lot of fat, but they tend not to do that.
Yeah,
So,
we don't do
so
it.
if I use glucose as my primary energy source, the best you're going to do after you go through the citric acid cycle and the electron transport chain, you're going to end up with 34 to 36 ATP, adenosine triphosphates. Well, if you use a 16 carbon fatty acid source of fuel, so in other words, fat, to keep it simple,
Mm-hmm.
you're going to basically end up with about 131 ATP. So rather you're getting that fat exogenously in your diet, that's the fat in your steak or in an avocado, or I'll just say a steak, that's a better version, or you're getting it endogenously from the fat on your belly. You're going to get way more energy or ATP from fat, which is what a low carb diet forces your body to do. Since you're not putting carbs in your body, you're forcing it to use fat as fuel. So part of the reason why you don't get tired is because you have a better source of fuel. The other reason you don't get tired is because it's a cleaner source of fuel. And again, we talked about how important it is to know biochemistry. If you know biochemistry, you'll understand why you shouldn't fear a low carb or keto diet, and you should actually embrace it. And until I see a study that says that long-term use of this diet is harmful, and I have not seen one,
Oh, I
I'm going
saw
to
one
continue.
out today, but I haven't read it yet.
Yeah, well, there's always studies, right?
Mhm.
And when we look at studies, we're going to constantly look at it and say, okay, let's judge it. Who sponsored the study?
Exactly. You have to
Was
go
it
through the protocol.
was it a double blind, randomized controlled trial, or was it so we have the knowledge to look at these studies and evaluate. And I still have not seen one that says long-term use of this diet is harmful. So again, biochemistry is important, and understanding the biochemistry explains a lot of the things that we wouldn't understand. So speaking of understanding, we have friends and family, and imagine what it was like for me to be the vegetarian doctor for about 8 or 9 years. And then my patients see me and I'm like, eat steak, and they're looking at me like, what are you talking about? So family, friends, and patients are sometimes going to, look at us with a, kind of a side look. Now, most of the times I think families here to support and help us, but there are times when their words, their actions can harm us. So I want you to talk a little bit about your weight loss journey as it relates to the support you got or didn't get over the years from friends and family.
Well, there are two parts of my family, the supportive ones and the non. And
Mm.
unfortunately, my parents were the fat shaming of me when I weighed 120, and I was 5'5" at that time. And I wasn't fat. I wasn't fat at all. But then they started using it as ways to get me to, like getting my license, for example. I couldn't get my license till I weighed 110. So I starved myself, got to 110, had a weigh in, and then they allowed me to get my license. So it was that type of thing. It was the only thing I was measured on. And it was horrible. And, my Aunt Monica wasn't much of a help either, but my other aunts were fabulous. They would embrace me and say, JoAnn, you're not even fat. I wasn't even fat, You are beautiful, you're bright, you're successful, blah, 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 encouraged me, especially my Aunt Dot and my Aunt Peggy. And I got the love, and it took me a long time, and it still plays in my head, so it's not totally gone. Uh, it's just, I was the fat center in the house, it's, oh, JoAnn's going to lose the weight this time. By then I was fat. I'm on this new vegan diet. I'd go to a vegan spa, things like that. I'd lose the weight and I'd find it immediately when I got back home into the real world. So they weren't good solutions for me. And until I consistently embraced the low carb diet, and I don't do the added fat like in my coffee or anything. I take the fat that's in the meat, the marble part of it, and it's just enjoy it. It satisfies, and I put a little butter on my vegetables, and I feel really good. And have my eggs and
Yeah.
my avocados and occasionally some nuts. Rarely any cheese, but I have a nice diet that works for me right now, and it's time to get the last 15 off. It's almost been a year at 155. It does this.
Okay. Okay.
5, it just varies 5 pounds. So, yeah,
That's awesome. Yeah. And
yeah,
sometimes, we have our own goals. Our bodies sometimes have their own
yeah.
goals. So
It's
you have
whole
to kind
different
of
now.
work with
So,
it. And
that I,
I think,
yeah, I know what's
yeah.
happening.
So just kind of, go with the flow and see how your body, I think in a lot of the way you judge it is how you feel. You also judge it how when you're getting your labs, are your metabolic labs looking okay? So I think you look at all those factors and maybe not look at one. We've learned that you want to look at multiple factors and kind of paint a picture of how you're doing. So I think that that's awesome. And I think you're doing a wonderful job. And
Yeah,
this
my
was really,
metabolic markers are very good.
yeah, I believe
Low
that.
triglycerides, high HDL.
There you go.
Actually, my LDL is 80,
Hmm.
and some
Yes.
of
So
my
you
doctors
got all of
are
them are in
too
order,
low.
It's like you can't, what more do you need to see, right? So,
It's yeah,
and I know this, year me and my wife are working on trying to maybe do a little meditation. So when I think about, the nest and those other elements, and rather it's exercise, less stress, more sleep, how have those other elements of the nest impacted your life on
well,
your weight loss journey?
about 2015, I some ladies asked me to walk with them, and I must credit my friend Faye for sticking with me. As she describes, I couldn't even walk around the block. But I kept showing up, and I'm not going as fast as she'd like me to, but you know what? I'm good. I'm good. I
Yeah,
have to
but
stop
that's it.
sometimes when I get this from because I'm a cardiac, but I'm doing pretty well and adopted some other sports like trampoline. What fun! Good for my lymph system. And I've started yoga and I'm swimming. So,
All those are wonderful,
and my
and they
goal in
sound
the
like
next
fun.
6 months is to really do Benbeckios.
Yeah,
Yeah, interval. Yeah.
that
As far as stress, I'm with you on the meditation.
yeah.
I've started doing that, but and I've really got to do what it takes here. I'm kind of doing the best I can now, so that's a lower level of commitment. But I would like to devote some time for that because
Okay.
most of my reasons for stress are gone.
Yeah, I
So
like that.
let's just even make it better. And I got the Aura ring for the sleep.
Good.
You'll need to get more REM,
Right. Okay.
but
That's awesome, and that's uh, Naveen Hitiarachi was a previous guest. I know his last name's a tongue twister, and he was a previous guest on the podcast, and he talked about the ring, how it really was helpful for him to understand where he struggled. So we have a lot of technology out there to help us, but the bigger message is sleep matters, reducing sleep matters, doing what Dr. Ben Bokikio teaches us, exercise matters. Obviously, what our guest today is teaching us, eating right and maybe using a little intermittent fasting matters. So all of those things matter. And another thing that matters, and I kind of tried to message this in my low carb discussion, is this ideal of taking ownership of your health and really not depending on the researchers and clinicians alone. They may have been trained in the ways of lifestyle in a way that we're being trained as we grow and learn, rather through a podcast or
mhm.
getting extra education. So I think it's important that we not rely on them, although we use them. We work with them in partnership. So my question to you is, talk a little bit about the importance of, being your own advocate in order for you to achieve your health related goals.
Well, it's not to be a victim of the medical system, and every doctor I talk to talks about the insurance restrictions and the time you can spend with patients. Churn them out, churn them out, churn them out. A doctor now does not have time to read all the literature. A doctor very often, and many of them of my previous doctors, basically followed standard of care and really didn't hear what you are different. So I would encourage, again, the reading any way you can, anything you can start with, and become uh, uh, an expert patient. Let's call it that. Become that expert patient. Become someone who asks good questions, asks, how can I get off this medication? Is there anything natural I can do? And that's what I would encourage them to do. And just really stand up for themselves. Because the doctors, the family doctor of the 1950s that I was used to ain't there anymore. So, and I'm lucky I have a very good team of doctors now.
Yeah. And I
Really
think,
fortunate.
again, they're all there's a rare doc who is not interested in helping you to be healthy.
Yeah,
But the training, again, is done in such a way that we are taught to think lifestyle as a first thought, but we're not taught how to apply that.
exactly. Yeah.
you
So
know, we
that's
just not.
yeah, it's
So
just not. Yeah.
yeah, so it's nothing. So the doc would do it if they knew how to apply that. And almost almost all of us at Low Carb USA came to that because we were a little skeptical about the guidelines because we knew it wasn't helping people the way we wanted it to. And we also were aware that we needed some other solution and that most problems have solutions. So it was that curiosity, the willingness to uh, be comfortable with removing some of those old beliefs. Those old beliefs. And I remember when I did my podcast on how we think, I think it was episode 14. And I said, if you spell the word belief, it's BELIE.
Ah,
So there's a big lie
yeah.
in our old belief system. So you know what I'm preaching to the choir right now. And sometimes our old beliefs don't serve us. And it is those moments when we need to pause and say, are our current beliefs serving us? And if the answer is no, then we need to remove those old beliefs. And I talked in the podcast about there's a bouncer in your brain. And
Hmm.
he's standing right there guarding your brain from beliefs and other factors that can harm you. And your job is to tell the bouncer, I give you free license to remove those things that are not serving us. So I really, really, really love it when I have somebody in front of me who has a bouncer and you said I'm going to be successful and I'm not going to let anything hold me back from that. So I really think that that's a message I want everybody to hear and understand. And we're doing this because we want to kind of live our purpose. We want to live the life the universe God intended. So for you, when you think about your journey, weight loss and reversing chronic medical conditions, and you're checking off your bucket list, right? It's a beautiful journey. As you reflect on that, what do you define as happiness for you? What's a
Well,
happy? What would you say that is for you?
well, let me give you a metaphor of you know what a mobile, if it's on your baby's crib or it's a Calder
Yes.
in the museums, it is elegantly imperfect.
Mm,
It spins. It's depending on its materials. It either it's beautiful light, it's a beautiful sound, or anything. Uh, Happiness for me, I had a really dysfunctional mobile. They had this big piece of weight, so the mobile was like this. It wasn't reflecting who I was or anything. With that, brought more into elegant imperfection or elegant imbalance. Not perfect, but really functioning well. And seeing my reflection very, very differently than I did before. And I am happy. I am happy. I am really embracing those sides of me, like my sense of humor, my mirth, my silliness, anything that just brings me joy. And I don't have to be anything more. Happiness is realizing I am enough.
and I'm just happy that you're at that point. I know when we were having our dinners at Low Carb USA at our round table, it was some chuckling
Awesome.
and some holding our bellies. We were having such a good time.
Yeah.
And rather that humor was coming from myself, my wife, or you, or whoever else was at the table, I really remember having some really good times. And I
Yeah.
just think that this is what life's all about. I'll say you'll always have those memories. I'll always have those memories.
Yeah.
Being
Yeah.
comfortable, being authentically ourselves.
Not
Uh,
posing or.
Man, I just love that. And my wife, I don't know if you would have a message to share with her, just saying hi to her, but she talks about you often. So I just
Oh,
want you to know that. So for Karan, my wife, anything you'd want to say to her as
oh,
a reflection of our time together?
she is absolutely wonderful, funny, authentic, and you two belong together. I mean, it's so nice to see a partnership like that, and just being ourselves. And it's taken me
Yeah,
a long time to learn that.
yeah. And
Behave one way in academia, and you have to, yeah.
I really appreciate that. And I, for anybody listening, listen, you have to grow in relationships, and we're growing. We
Hmm.
read stuff, and in fact, I actually my next column with the diet doctor, which comes out this month, the month of September, will be on relationships.
Hmm.
And the rope in the nest talks about the importance of relationships.
Hmm.
So that's why I said you have to come to this conference with me. It becomes a little bit of a vacation when your spouse is with you,
Yeah.
and you get a chance to spend time. And it's just nice to have a partner. But I just wanted to let you know that you definitely resonated with her, and
Oh, she is.
we had a good time. So I just really just
Yeah.
wanted to say that. Absolutely. So it's really, so let's go to the nest and rope, since I brought it up. And I know you're working on a lot of things, but when you think about the nutrition, exercise, less stress, more sleep, how we think,
Hmm.
avoiding trauma and relationships, of course, with the rope, avoiding harmful organisms, pollutants, and of course, protecting our emotions and what I just spoke of, our life experiences. If
Hmm.
they don't serve us, it was nice. Beyonce said, to the left, to the left. Got
Yeah.
to let it go. That's right. Beyonce said it real well. So, what do you think will be your focus in the next 6 to 12 months?
Well, again, more focus on meditation uh, because it's really good for me, and I'm doing pretty. My friendships are very good. I might like to find a partner in life. I don't have that right now. Um, I think I'm still somewhat afraid of it. So I have to work. I have to be a little more introspective. If you see somebody good, you send them my way. But
And wait a minute, I got to say this. I got to say this. You sure did a little flirting at that low carb USA. So I'm surprised my wife didn't get you.
well, yes, I know. But I think she got me, and I am old
That's
enough to be your mother.
that's all good. Well, I appreciate it. It made me blush, and we had fun with
Oh,
that.
have fun with it. But yeah, it was nice. And yeah, so I may be looking for that. As far as not the pollutants, but the organics, I have
Yeah,
installed water filters in my house this year.
good, good,
So
good.
I get really good drinking water. And pollutants, well, I eat organic everywhere I can, with the
Hmm.
important things. I still don't like it that they use glyphosate on my lawn.
Hmm.
Gotta
Yeah,
gotta change that.
yeah,
Uh, ugh. And I'm really paying attention to my emotions.
yeah.
I kind of live at a higher emotional level if we were to scale them, like appreciation, love, joy. Uh, rarely show my anger.
Right,
It's
right.
there, but I have a trick to deal with it. So
That's
I'll have
fair.
to
As
see it.
long as
Yeah,
yeah, I think as long as you're managing it,
yeah.
it's okay. Yeah, you don't have to always let it out. It just has to have a way to manage it so that it
You
don't
have to
build up.
fi-
But I
you
think
have to
you're
you have to
there.
claim it,
Yeah,
and
that's it.
then you ask what you're committed to,
Yeah,
And then you respond from, well, are you committed to this thing?
Nice. Well, I love
And
it.
then
I
you
love it.
do that.
And sounds like the meditation is what we're focused on as well. And we're all, it's an ongoing thing. And
Yes,
it's so many
we're
things
work in
to,
process and
yeah,
progress,
just trying to get better, just
Just
trying to get better.
being
So
introspective and trying to get better. So,
I have a definitely appreciation as I'm kind of looking off as we're kind of wrapping up. I hear a ambulance coming to our building. I see a fire truck, and man, you're talking about appreciating that ambulance is not for me, right?
exactly. Give grace
It's
to
just
the
it's
person.
really that appreciation of our life journey and just each day, every moment. Don't take it for granted. There's been I think we've had three. I don't know if it's a holiday thing, but there's been at least three coming to our building. It's a big building. It's a 50 multi specialty building, but that's a lot. So um, I don't know. So I definitely I appreciate life. I appreciate you, and I know you have a Instagram hook, and I don't know if you're anywhere else. So where do people find you if they want to see what you're posting and sharing?
Well, I don't put a lot, but I promise I will now.
Okay.
Um, it's Doctor with a dot, McManamy on Instagram. So please, use it. And I joined Twitter while I was out at the low carb conference. And I
Nice.
am Dr. McManamy without the dot on Twitter. And
Cool.
I'm just beginning to learn how to use it. So follow me on Twitter and
Absolutely.
I will talk more. Yes.
That's right. And I think you'll love Twitter. That's probably where I have my biggest following. It's probably where I've met the most people.
Hmm.
So I think it'll be very helpful. Certainly, when we share this, we'll make sure that people see your Twitter handle. So I appreciate that. And I just, again, just the opportunity to share your story has been a gift to me. And I hope it's a gift to those who are listening as well. So I want to thank you
Oh,
again
thank you.
for allowing me to help you check that bucket list.
Thank you. Now perhaps you can help me put another one in.
That's right. That's right. Absolutely. I'll do that. And I appreciate you. So we'll wrap up with that. And for those who are listening or watching, today's episode, we talked about many things. We talked about, of course, the healing power of a low carb diet and maybe a little bit about the intermittent fasting component. But we were reminded by Dr. JoAnn that guess what? It's about sleep and stress and exercise as well. And so we know those things are important. And we also talked about some of the resources that are available to us to help us achieve our goals. Rather, it's family members we spend more time with, family members we spend less time with, and
Mhm.
sometimes podcasts, YouTube, and all of the various books and resources that are available. But we also talked about how important it is to define your journey and to not depend on others. Although we want to be supported by others, we're not going to depend on others to help us achieve our goals. We're never going to give up and assume that there's not a solution to the problems we face. So I really appreciate Dr. JoAnn's insights that she shared and also her motivation, and she's just a reflection of what's possible. She's showing us that if you believe in yourself and you set high goals, we're gonna be singing in the background in the future. We're going to be singing in the background. So we want to really encourage anybody that has goals to never sell yourself short and to work towards those goals. So as we conclude episode number 63 of the Protecting Your Nest podcast, I again ask that you all be safe, be well, and continue to protect your nest. And thanks again, Dr. JoAnn, for being with me today.